With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown.
And I am Yolana Weeks.
Our top stories.
Nevis Mango Festival 2025 fast approaching, a culinary extravaganza and community celebration.
St. Kitts Music Festival performing artist Colin Wyatt paid tribute to fallen teen Janelica Romney.
St. Kitts Nevis Prime Minister promises justice for Janelica Romney. Leaders lament her death. Nolan charged in major drug operation. Visa restrictions for family and friends of sanctioned drug traffickers. St. Lucia police warn of new investment scam following Creators Alliance fraud. Internationally, the Gaza humanitarian crisis and ongoing conflict.
Now, the details.
The highly anticipated Nevis Mango Festival is drawing near, set to transform the island into a vibrant hub of culinary delight and community engagement from July 4th to 6th, 2025. The year's festival promises a weekend filled with the island's abundant mango varieties, the distinguished expertise of Chef Bryant Terry, and a showcase of local Nevision talent. Premier of Nevis, the Honourable Mark Brantley, recently addressed the upcoming event, extending a spirited invitation to the residents of both St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as visitors from across the region and the globe, to partake in what has become a premier summer attraction. Brantley underscored the festival's role in promoting community tourism and involving diverse sectors of the island's population.
On the 3rd, which is July 3rd, we have the official opening. The Mango Festival will be officially launched at the MGR Park at 9:30 a.m. And we'll have a panel discussion by our celebrity chef, Bryant Terry. He's the person who's leading the charge this year. On Friday, July 4th at Ubrenta in Cades Bay, starting at 12:30, we have a chef master class. That event is sold out. We have a mango mixologist competition, mango eating contest. So all of you members of the press, especially our brothers and sisters from St. Kitts who can't get enough Nevis mangoes, come over and be a part of the mango eating contest. On Friday, there's mango stoning. And that is interesting. You have to find mango trees with mangoes on them to have a mango stoning competition. So it's interesting that that's happening at Ubrenta. There's going to be a tug of war. Mango tasting stations experience the juicy joy of 44 plus mango varieties, all grown right here in Nevis. So you can go from station to station tasting the different mangoes. And hopefully you can, if you're good enough, tell which is which. Some of us can, some can't. I don't think I could identify 44, but I certainly can identify maybe about 5 or 10. And then there's a beach bar crawl Friday night. Penny's Beach comes alive at the iconic beach bars there with live music and themed drinks. So everywhere you go in Penny's for the bar crawl, you'll have themed drinks, mango again being the underlying theme. Saturday, July 5th, the Mango Passport Food Tour. The Passport Food Tour is a culinary adventure across Nevis with stops at local eateries and bars. Visitors will receive a passport to collect stamps at each stop. Evening highlight will be the supper club at Golden Rock Inn. I regret to advise that that tour is now sold out. That's a refined dining experience under the stars with a mango-infused gourmet menu curated by celebrated chefs. And then on Sunday, July 6th, for the love of mangoes, 1 p.m. This is the grand finale at the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park. We will have over 50 chefs showcasing mango-inspired dishes from sweet to savory. We'll have a kids zone. We'll have book signing featuring culinary authors and local creatives. Mango concert that evening, live music, food and festivities celebrating Nevision culture and creativity. And this year we have brought back the VIP lounge that is curated this year for us by Carambola Beach Club. This experience, signature experience, will have VIP access, unlimited premium cocktails, 20 plus gourmet samples from private chefs, and a premier view of the Mango Festival concert. Receive 5 complimentary samples to enjoy mango tastings from the general area. Last year there was a complaint. People who are in VIP say that they wanted to go on the grounds to taste what was on the grounds. And they were restricted to only what was available in the VIP area. So this year we have listened, and in addition to the samples in the VIP area, you will also get access to at least 5 of the booths on the ground, so you can walk around and sample what's on the grounds as well. please visit www.nevismangofest.com for your tickets. As I say, unfortunately, the supper club at Golden Rock is sold out. The chef masterclass as well is sold out. But other events are still available, so we asked you. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to see a consistent theme in what the government is doing. These events, again, are all scattered around Nevis. You have an event at Golden Rock, you have an event at Ubrenta, which is on the other side, you have the Passport Food Tour, which takes you around the island. And when the Passport Food Tour was done, the last time, it goes up into Bansgut, it goes up into Cotton Ground, it goes into the villages. The idea is to involve everybody. So when we talk about community tourism, this is what community tourism looks like. We're giving everybody an opportunity. As we say colloquially, we're giving everybody a bite, allowing our people to experience where they are. And then, of course, we bring everybody together for the grand finale at the Malcolm Guichard Park, and that, again, will be Sunday, July 6th. So I'm inviting all of St. Kitts, I'm inviting all of Nevis, and I'm inviting people from all across the region and the world to come and be a part of that. We anticipate it will be a huge event on July 6th at the MGR Park. Again, for your tickets, go to www.nevismangofest.com.
Tickets for the various festival events can be purchased at www.nevismangofest.com.
Colin Wyatt, during his onstage performance at the St. Kitts Music Festival on Friday night, June 27, paid tribute to Janelica Rumney, the slain teen whose body was discovered earlier that day, sending the nation into mourning. So touched was he by the teen's passing, Wyatt led the audience in a moment of silence as a form of respect. The performing artist expressed that women must be protected, sharing a story about his sister who had been missing a few weeks before.
It was devastating because a few weeks back there was an incident where my sister was missing, and the way that made me feel, it made me shed tears. And luckily that we found her alive and well, and I was looking for this to be the same outcome, and to see that a young girl at such a tender age, life being ripped away from her, it's really devastating, and it hurts. And I think that we need to do better as a people. We need to protect the women, we need to protect the young girls, because I have nieces, I have sisters, and I had a mother. And I wouldn't want to see that for anybody. Not even my family, but anybody else.
Wyatt's tribute to the fallen Verchilles High School student touched the hearts of many others, especially those who followed the story of Rumney's disappearance since the news first broke. The teen went missing on June 16, 2025. She was the only child of her mother.
The discovery of the body of Janelica Romney, 15, of New Guinea, who had been missing since June 16, 2025, has rocked the nation. Her body was found on June 27, 2025 in the Whitegate area. The state in which her body was found has not been shared, as the investigation is still ongoing. An autopsy will determine the exact cause of death. The disappearance of the teen was shrouded in concern as the entire Federation awaited her safe return. Selwyn Pringle, 64, of Dieppe Bay, has been arrested and charged with 2 warrants in the first instance for the offenses of kidnapping and false imprisonment in connection with the disappearance of Janelica. The police have not indicated any additional charges to Pringle or anyone else in connection with the teen's death at the time of reporting. The Federation awaits the developments of the investigation. In a statement released on June 27th from the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew, he promised justice concerning Janelica's death. Quote, "Let me be clear. We will continue to pursue justice with the full weight of the law. No stone will be left unturned." End quote. Premier of Nevis, the Honourable Mark Brantley, lamented Janelica's death and stated that for the nation to truly be sustainable, its youth should be particularly protected, as they are the future of St. Kitts and Nevis's development. The Honourable Samuel Gums, Minister and Parliamentary Representative for Constituency No. 4, shared in a statement that Janelica's death is a loss to the entire nation. Quote, "This is a tragedy that no parent, no family, no community should ever have to endure." End quote. Azad Gums, Deputy Chairman of the People's Action Movement and candidate for Constituency No. 4, expressed heartfelt sadness over the loss of such a young life. In a statement from the Honorable Dr. Timothy Harris, leader of the People's Labour Party, on the tragic death of Janelica, he shared that as a nation, we should be committed to building a safer, more compassionate society. Her disappearance and death have signaled a cry from the citizens and residents of St. Kitts and Nevis. Serious measures are needed to protect the nation's children. The Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force has announced the formal charging of Bruce Nolan of Lower Shaw Avenue, Macknight, following a significant drug operation conducted by the Anti-Narcotics Unit. The operation commenced early on June 26, 2025 at approximately 5 a.m. when members of the Anti-Narcotics Unit executed a search warrant at Nolan's residence. During the meticulous search, officers discovered a quantity of white powdery substance which is currently suspected to be cocaine on the property. Following this discovery, Nolan was immediately taken into police custody on suspicion of drug possession pending further investigation. Later on the same day, at approximately 11:25 a.m., Bruce Nolan was formally charged at the Bastille police station. He faces 2 warrants in the first instance, specifically for the offenses of possession of cocaine and possession of cocaine with intent to supply. This is not the first time Bruce Nolan has been linked to drug charges. A past incident in 2008 also saw him taken into custody and charged after marijuana was discovered at his home.
In regional news,
Visa restrictions for family and friends of sanctioned drug traffickers, News Source Guyana reports.
As part of its ongoing global crackdown on the drug trade and the importation of drugs into the U.S., the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has announced visa restrictions for family, close personal, and business associates of sanctioned persons involved in the drug trade. In a statement, the U.S. State Department said that fentanyl crisis in the U.S. is unprecedented, with overdoses remaining the leading cause of death for Americans ages 18 to 44. Adding that more than 40% of Americans reportedly know someone who has died from an opioid overdose. In 2024, the U.S. averaged over 220 overdose deaths daily. The U.S. Secretary of State said he's announcing the new visa restriction policy under Section 212A3C of the Immigration and Nationality Act of the U.S. that will apply to family members and close personal and business associates of individuals sanctioned under Executive Order 14059, imposing sanctions on foreign persons involved in the global illegal drug trade. He said imposing visa restrictions on drug traffickers, their family members, and close personal and business associates will not only prevent them from entering the U.S., but it will serve as a deterrent for continued illegal activities. 3 weeks ago, the U.S. announced sanctions against 4 Guyanese nationals who are alleged to be involved in the drug trade. Senior Superintendent of Police Himnot Saw is among the 4 Guyanese who were sanctioned. The U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control named Senior Superintendent of Police Himnot Saw, along with businessman Paul Davey Jr., Mark Cromwell, also known as Demon of Buxton, and Randolph Duncan, also known as Rudolph Duncan, to its latest list of sanctioned individuals. According to the U.S. government, the 4 are linked to 2 Colombian nationals who have also been sanctioned by the U.S. for drug trafficking and other related crimes. The U.S. government alleged that the 4 Guyanese, along with the 2 Colombians, have been exploiting the rivers and jungles of South America by transiting large quantities of cocaine from Colombia and Venezuela through the waters of Guyana and Suriname.
St. Lucia police warn of new investment scam following Creators Alliance fraud. DBS St. Lucia has the details.
During a police press conference on Thursday, Inspector Joshua Kami, who is in charge of information and communication technologies for the RSLPF, provided updates on IT applications within the force. It was revealed that there are new fraudulent financial schemes popping up. St. Lucians and people across the region recently fell victim to the Ponzi scheme Creators Alliance, with thousands suffering substantial financial losses. On May 13th, the Financial Intelligence Authority and the police carried out an island-wide operation targeting the Creators Alliance investment scheme. Several locations were searched and key suspects were taken into custody. Now, the police say another such scheme has emerged, called We Invest.
In a 7-day period, it offers you a 20% interest on crypto investment and 40% interest in 14 days, please, if it sounds too good to be true, it may be too good to be true.
Section 126 of the Consumer Protection Act makes the participation in pyramid selling schemes a criminal offense with fines up to $5,000 and/or imprisonment for up to 2 years. Inspector Kami provided an update on CCTV installations island-wide. He says the police are now able to efficiently and effectively investigate crimes using the devices. He adds that this has reduced processing time for several cases. Now he says the police are looking at increasing the capacity of these cameras.
Secondly, I would like to focus on our police management system, which is one of the applications that is leading in the region. And this application is a multifold one in that it allows police officers to do a lot of manual work, which has been done for years at the stations, digitally, and hence allowing information to be shared instantaneously. In addition, this application allows for proactive policing and even the use of AI application for crime prediction and prevention.
Additionally, he says the RSLPF has continuously adopted the use of artificial intelligence technology to reduce processing time for investigations, expedite analysis, and to be proactive in crime fighting. For the DBS News World, Miriam Montoute reporting.
We now bring you these international reports.
Let's speak to Chris Doyle, Director of the Council for Arab-British Understanding and a commentator on Middle East affairs, joining us live now from London. Mr. Chris Doyle, thank you for your time. So Tariq's report there highlighting the mass killings at GHF sites. So what do you think is the real motive here behind the establishment of the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, especially considering the reporting we're seeing in the Israeli media about soldiers ordering to fire on civilians who pose absolutely no threat?
Well, it is an abomination, an utter disgrace, an inversion of all the global humanitarian principles about independence and impartiality, neutrality. And the reason it was set up is simply because Israel was under pressure, given its 11-week-old blockade of the Gaza Strip. All 0.23 million Palestinians were denied food, water, medication, all forms of humanitarian aid. So in order to get round that and not allow the UN humanitarian agencies in, the associated agencies, they created these militarized, securitized hubs, 4 of them. There used to be 400 distribution centers in Gaza, and they became death traps, as we've seen. Around about 550 Palestinians have been killed in trying to get food there, to travel by foot, long journeys, and then the families worry whether they'll ever come back again. This should never, ever have been allowed to have been set up or established when there is a proper, effective aid mechanism at the ready, at the borders with the UN agencies and others. So this really is a continuation of that blockade. It is a way of trying still to put huge pressure on Palestinian civilians, using starvation as a policy of war, because in those parcels, the boxes that they pick up, there's no water and there's no fuel. And the food, the number of meals, is not sufficient to feed the population of the Gaza Strip. The elderly, the infirm, those who've been injured can't get there. So, unfortunately, it's another example of where Israel enjoys complete and utter impunity from any of the norms of war, of international law. And this has to be dismantled now, and the proper systems of delivery and distribution of aid set back up.
And Mr. Doyle, no ceasefire now for the longest time. Complete stalemate with Netanyahu clearly prolonging this war despite protests, not just abroad, but also domestically. And now we have a Trump speculating that there could be a ceasefire in Gaza within a week even. And also an Israeli newspaper has reported that the deal could expand the Abraham Accords with regional countries, including Syria. Now, the question is, what's changed, if at all? And do you see Netanyahu agreeing to a ceasefire in the first place?
I think we have a long way to go, sadly, until we get to a ceasefire. Many hurdles to jump over. And this, I think, is coming from the Trump administration trying to build on what they see as the success with Iran, the way in which, the president got that ceasefire after Israel's aggression, and to try to put pressure on Hamas, on others, to secure some form of ceasefire. But what you are not hearing is how they are going to actually get the aid back into Gaza, how they're going to reconstruct Gaza, how they're going to liberate Palestinians from the yoke of occupation and end that genocide. It is all about how you get a ceasefire for Israel, how you get normalized relations between Israel and some of his neighbors, and indeed, I'm afraid, how you get Donald Trump to get a Nobel Peace Prize. So they have it inverted. They're doing it the wrong way around. There needs pressure on Israel to stop the military operations, to go back to the ceasefire deal that was agreed, in fact, back in January, and to get to, yes, the release of hostages, but also Palestinian detainees. But it's a matter of urgency to allow the United Nations to do its proper work. If you do not put pressure on Israel, we will not get a proper ceasefire that means that Palestinians' lives can somehow start returning to dignity and decency, and they can try to recover from this genocide. Moreover, there's got to be accountability at the end of all of this, and nobody is talking about that. A proper investigation and accountability for those who committed war crimes and crimes against humanity. And once again, the White House is never going to be talking about that. And that's one reason why Israel will continue to escalate on every front, the continued bombings of Lebanon and Syria. It's a very mixed picture.
And speaking of a lack of accountability, we're certainly seeing this with Israel's occupation in the West Bank. It's worsening. Can you clarify the connection between what's taking place in Gaza with the expansion of land grabbing in the occupied West Bank and, of course, East Jerusalem as well, restriction of movement and these constant settler attacks that do go unpunished and, if anything, encouraged?
Netanyahu wants to escalate on every front. In many ways, people have speculated that one of the reasons that he ordered the attacks on Iran was to divert and deflect attention from the horrors of what was going on in Gaza. And I think the fear is now that Iran and Israel are pulled into a ceasefire, maybe there'll be talks with Iran, that actually the Israeli attention will go to escalate in the West Bank even further. And you're going to see even more violent settler attacks on Palestinian villages. You're going to see even more demolitions. They've been going on apace, even more land grabs. And of course, Israeli military operations have been going apace in the northern part of the West Bank, particularly in refugee camps. Well, those operations can certainly be expanded. And this is all a part also of Netanyahu wanting to hold on to power, to keep that coalition together. He can keep those right-wing extremists tied into his coalition if he makes progress in their eyes in the West Bank and giving them more control and ending any possibility, of course, of a Palestinian state. Because, of course, before the whole Iran conflict, there was going to be an international conference where many major powers may well have recognized an independent state of Palestine. So this fits absolutely within Netanyahu's strategy, his long-term vision. He wants the West Bank to eventually be annexed formally to Israel. Effectively, it already is. And to put an end to all the Palestinian nationalist dreams. Now, the question is, does he get away with it? Well, based on what we have seen in the last 20 months, he's got every reason to believe he can.
Right. Well, hundreds of protesters have gathered in Thailand's capital in Bangkok, demanding the resignation of Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra. Anger has been building over her handling of a border dispute with Cambodia. Thai nationalists accuse her of selling out the country after a phone call she had with former Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen was leaked. During their conversation, Shinawatra called the former Cambodian leader uncle and members of the Thai military opponents. Tony Cheng is live for us in the Thai capital, Bangkok. Tony, can you explain who the protesters are that we're seeing coming out today? In large numbers, it seems.
Very large numbers, and I think we had to revise that number of hundreds up to thousands, between, I'd say, about 4,000 and 5,000 here at Victory Monument down in central Bangkok. The mood has slightly dampened in the last 15 minutes with a heavy downpour, but nobody seems to be going away. Lots of colourful umbrellas up. I think part of the reason for that is because a lot of people have travelled from out of town to be here. We were out there about 20 minutes ago speaking to people. They come from the deep south, from the provinces on the western border, from central Thailand. And I think that's because there is really a very genuine feeling here that they want the Prime Minister out. People we spoke to said that she hadn't represented the country very well, particularly in this conflict with Cambodia, but also more generally, they say they don't like the policies of her party, Pheu Thai. I think underlying this is another problem. The average age here is well over 60. And what we're really seeing is unhappiness with Thaksin Shinawatra, her father, the man who's been so divisive in Thailand for more than 2 decades. He's now back. Many people feel he's the puppet. He's pulling the strings of his daughter, the puppet, who's in front. This is really unhappiness, frankly, which is being expressed at him.
Yeah, and a wealthy and powerful family, as you just mentioned there. But is the Prime Minister's position really under threat, do you think?
I think it really is. This is the first protest we've seen. And the numbers are pretty good, but I think compared to what we've seen in Bangkok over the past decade, you wouldn't have said they're a huge crowd, nor is it particularly vociferous. But I think what this expresses is a wider mood around the country, and that is, I think, fairly widely felt. What we're also seeing here is a combination of those forces that we've seen in the past, the red shirts, the yellow shirts. Well, they're both here today. The young aren't here, but they've been almost discounted when the party that won the last election wasn't allowed to rule. So the Prime Minister's position is really pretty tenuous at the moment. I think we're not going to see any changes in the next couple of days, but we are expecting a decision to be made at the Constitutional Court later this week. If that proceeds, there could well be a serious investigation that threatens her position. And I think there is the possibility that street protests like this might gain momentum if more people come out in the weeks and months to come.
Wall Street extended its rally on Friday, sending the S&P 500 and Nasdaq to all-time closing highs, with each adding 0.5%, while the Dow climbed 1%. The rally confirmed a bull market for the Nasdaq since its post-Liberation Day trough on April 8th. Stocks were boosted by trade deal hopes, while economic data helped solidify expectations for rate cuts later this year from the Federal Reserve. Mike Muscio, president of FBB Capital Partners, said second quarter earnings results will be key to justifying the high stock valuations of S&P 500 companies.
It's nice that we've come back to 6,100, but what hasn't really changed there is the earnings picture hasn't changed all that much. So 6,100 this time around from 6 months ago or 5 months ago is not that much cheaper. If the earnings story improves, then you could have a cheaper 6,100 on the S&P, and that could be compelling.
A report from the Commerce Department on Friday showed consumer income and spending unexpectedly contracted in May. And while the impact of tariffs on consumer prices has not yet been fully realized, inflation continues to hover above the Fed's 2% annual target. Stocks on the move Friday included Nvidia, which rose close to 2%, edging near a $4 trillion market capitalization after reclaiming its position as the world's most valuable company. And shares of Nike jumped more than 15% after forecasting a smaller-than-expected drop in first-quarter revenue. Shares of rivals Lululemon Athletica and Hoka owner Deckers Outdoor also rose.
President Trump says he's cutting off trade talks with neighbour Canada immediately. It's over plans by the Canadians to enforce a new tax targeting big tech companies, which is predicted to cost them more than $7 billion over the next 5 years. Both US Republicans and Democrats have criticised the levy as it mainly affects American companies such as Google and Amazon. Mr. Trump said he would announce new tariffs on Canadian exports within a week. The The Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said Ottawa would continue to conduct trade negotiations in the best interests of Canadians. The nations had been working to agree a trade deal by mid-July.
They did something with our tech companies today trying to copy Europe. You know, they copied Europe. It's not going to work out well for Europe either, and it's not going to work out well for Canada. They were foolish to do it. And so I said we're going to stop all negotiations with Canada right now until they straighten out their act.
Well, I've been discussing this with our North America correspondent Jake Kwan, who's in Washington. I started by asking him about the digital service tax.
So this is a tax on digital goods that are being sold to Canadians or money being made in the Canadian market. The idea is that when you sell goods to Canadians, you tax that. So why not the digital intangible items like, when you're selling Google ads or YouTube, Spotify, or any other digital intangible goods. Now, Canadian government has said that they will tax these companies 3%, which will raise billions of dollars for the Canadian government. And this was already implemented last year, but the first day of the payment was coming up this Monday. Now, this is something that exists in many other countries. This is not just a Canadian tax. European countries have them, including the United Kingdom. But as you can imagine, American companies were not very happy about it. And of course, not just Trump administration, but Biden administration also had problem with this.
President Trump, we heard strong words from him. He is even threatening new tariffs, isn't he?
Certainly, and he called it a direct and blatant attack on the United States and said that, new tariffs on Canada will be revealed next week. And this is a huge issue for these two countries because they are each other's biggest trade partner. And America is, of course, the biggest export destination for Canadians. And what's at stake is really the price of goods for consumers on both sides of the border. You can imagine prices rising for anything between grocery items to cars.
So what's been the reaction from Canada? Because Prime Minister Mark Carney and President Trump, they had been talking.
Yeah, for Prime Minister Carney, he brushed it off, saying that the negotiation will continue. But by all indication, the two leaders enjoyed a good relationship. President Trump, of course, did not enjoy as good of a relationship with Mr. Carney's predecessor. But when Prime Minister visited Washington, as well as when they met at the G7 this month, they looked like they were getting on well. So by all indication, it looked like the two countries were headed to having a trade deal by mid-July, which was when the deadline for getting a deal was.
And I assume you talk about that deadline. A lot of other countries who are trying to negotiate with President Trump over tariffs will be watching this very carefully.
Certainly. I think the suspension of the talks with them, it really highlights how difficult it might be to get these trade deals with these countries. President Trump and the White House promised that they will get 90 deals in 90 days. But we're almost there at the deadline of that 90 days. And come July 9th, it does not look like there are many of these deals going to be signed. America has a deal with UK and has somewhat of a deal with China. But now what the White House and his secretaries are saying is that there may have to be an extension. And President Trump also seemed somewhat pessimistic there might be a deal at the end of this extension, saying that perhaps America may have to slap a flat 25% tariffs on all countries around the world.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were
Nevis Mango Festival 2025 fast approaching, a culinary extravaganza and community celebration.
St. Kitts Music Festival performing artist Colin Wyatt paid tribute to fallen teen Janelica Romney.
St. Kitts Nevis Prime Minister promises justice for Janelica Romney. Leaders lament her death. Nolan charged in major drug operation. Visa restrictions for family and friends of sanctioned drug traffickers. St. Lucia police warn of new investment scam following Creators Alliance fraud. Internationally, the Gaza humanitarian crisis and ongoing conflict.
Thank you for listening.